So all of the EV companies I'm going to mention in this video are Chinese manufacturers, and the first one is BYD. Now, they recently hit the press because they just beat Tesla's sales of EV vehicles in the last quarter. But they came on my radar maybe a year ago. I was actually kind of quite surprised when I realized that there was this new manufacturer who were making the electric London buses. It was kind of a surprise, right? Because it was kind of almost like me coming to terms with the fact that the Chinese are kind of gradually moving their market or shifting their market into the UK, into Europe. And all of these companies are doing that. And so BYD, like, they have a very unique advantage, and that unique advantage is cost. And they have the cheapest EV on the market at $11,000, and it's called a Seagull. And so they started off as a battery manufacturing company, and they manufactured batteries for like mobile phone companies, including Motorola. This is almost like the root cause or the reason why they have such a competitive advantage. And that competitive advantage, which allows them to make cars that are so cost effective, is because they actually manage the whole supply chain of the batteries that they use in their EV vehicles. So they source the raw material to manufacture the battery, which they then place into the EV itself. Because the battery is at about like 40% of the cost of the vehicle, you know, they have this very, very substantial advantage, which allows them to like price their cars so competitively. They are also kind of like relatively well known because Berkshire Hathaway, like Warren Buffett's conglomerate company, well, they currently hold 8%. They used to hold 10, but they decreased their holding because apparently they didn't want to compete with Tesla. And so Charlie Munger mentioned how impressed he was with the founder. Now the founder is called Wang Chuanfu. If you look into his backstory, it's like really, really impressive. You know, a guy who's come from nothing, who had extreme hardship, lost both his parents, was brought up in some like obscure province in China. He has a technical degree in like physics, I think it is, which helped him with the manufacturing of the battery, which is how BYD first started as manufacturing batteries for mobile phones. And so BYD cars, you know, like I was saying, you know, like with all of the car manufacturers I'm going to mention, they all have some kind of presence in Europe already. And I can only see this increasing across the board. Like I've said before, you know, that's something that I always look for when I'm putting money into a company, is not only the individual and assessing the individual strength of character, but also like, is there space to grow? Is there room to grow? What is the strategy for expansion? Now, they have a very aggressive growth strategy. They've got headquarters in the Netherlands, in the UK and Hungary, and their cars are already available in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, France, Italy, Germany and Spain. And so their offering doesn't just include cars, they also do buses, they do vans, and they do forklift trucks as well. If you put it into context of where they are and compare it to Tesla, if you like, you know, they're trading at kind of a relatively reasonable price, I would say. At like, I think it's around $40 to $50 at the moment. And like I was saying, you know, it's like looking at that as kind of a long-term investment. You know, you put money into that and you hold it. You hold it for the next 10, 20 years. And with that, you know, I anticipate the share price to rise over that time, simply because there's room to grow. You know, they have strategic presence across Europe, but they haven't like fully penetrated these markets yet. And of the three companies that I mentioned, you know, I would probably say that BYD is probably like, well, it's certainly the most established of the companies. So with that in mind, you could kind of say that they're probably the safest investment. And from what I can see online on Simply Wall Street, BYD, they have like really healthy inside ownership. As of like September 2023, they have an inside ownership of about 30%, which is something that I always look for. It means that, you know, you've got people within the organization who, as a shareholder, you know, they're going to represent your interests. Now, the next company is a company called Geely, spelled G-E-E-L-Y. And again, this company, I came across it like just around the same time as BYD as well. Geely actually manufacture the London black taxis or black cabs. So their kind of approach to getting their foot into Europe has in part been through like mergers and acquisitions. So they've gradually been acquiring a percentage stake in other businesses. You know, they have a like over 70% stake in Volvo. They have a 51% stake in Lotus. They have a small holding in Mercedes-Benz. I think it's around like 9 or 10%. And they have a 17% holding in Aston Martin. They already have presence in North America, Europe, China, and Southeast Asia. And one way in which they differ from BYD and Tesla is that Geely have a battery swapping technology, which basically means that as a driver, you don't have to charge your car. You can actually stop at different stations and just swap out your battery. Now this, apparently it takes about 5 minutes to do if you're a driver, and they've actually partnered up with another company, another EV company called Nano in China, to cross-collaborate on this technology. Geely are actually working on flying cars. No runway is needed. What they do is that these Geely cars, if you like, that fly, they do like vertical landing and taking off. So apparently it's like, you know, this is like way ahead of the time, right? But apparently it's like very easy for these flying cars to take off and land because they do vertical landing. So again, it's like something that you might want to weigh up is like, in terms of like, if you want to put money into it, do you consider like flying cars to be something of the future? You know, I did talk about another company called Archer Aviation who are focusing purely on this, on flying cars. Here you have Geely that are kind of operating on two avenues. They're doing the EV vehicles, but they're also doing flying vehicles as well. And I suppose in one way, if you're into the flying vehicles kind of thing, this could potentially present itself as an opportunity for you to invest in something which is a little bit more kind of diversified, if you like. Now, they already have presence in Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, Spain, Sweden, and Italy. And again, you know, this is just a start. So there's obviously going to be like gradual expansion. Obviously, they have the presence in the UK as well with the black cabs. So these are all avenues for them to kind of almost align themselves strategically to then move into Europe, into kind of European countries where they're not yet placed. And they do currently have expansion plans to get into Switzerland and Austria as well. Now, one of the things that I really, really like about Geely is that there is like really strong inside ownership at like around 40%, you know, depending on where you look. I think Yahoo Finance says about 39 and Simply Wall Street says about 41. So it's roughly around 40%. And the way I look at this is that there's huge room to grow. You know, currently the share price is at around $8. Like I said, you know, they're a little bit behind in terms of, they're certainly not ahead of BYD in any case. But one of the things that I always look at is like companies where there's a lot of room to grow. And they do obviously have a kind of a unique service offering, which is this battery swapping technology, which they're developing with Neo. And then the final thing is around the owner himself. You know, he has a really, really interesting backstory as well. So like the owner of BYD, Li Shufu, who is the founder of Geely, started pretty much from nothing. You know, when he was, I mean, he grew up in a provincial part of China, in like a farming area. And so he grew up attending cattle, farming with his parents, and pretty much like just going around helping people and almost hustling to earn a little bit of a living. And so what I'll do, rather than like carrying on with this guy's like full life story, I'll stick a link in the description below where you can kind of watch this video. But again, like I always say, you know, the whole principle or premise with me is to like look at individuals who demonstrate something special. And to me, like, you know, all of these individuals who I share, you know, there's a level of like almost coming from nothing, working really hard, demonstrating a real sense of resourcefulness and entrepreneurial flair, which are all things that I kind of look for if I'm putting my money in. So have a little look in the link of description for the video, and then you can find out a little bit more. Now, the next company, like I already mentioned, is a company called Neo. And so one of their claims to fame is that they have the fastest autonomous supercar. It's called the Neo EP9. And some other key like claim to fame, I suppose, is that they have the best-selling 6 or 7 seater cars in Norway's premium SUV market. And this could just be signs of like real future opportunity for them to grow into other European markets, as they have presence in San Jose in the US, in London, in Munich in Germany, and in Shanghai as well. And their cars are available in Germany, in the UK, in US, and in China. They also have like a heavily focused AI functionality in the car. And so what this does is, I think it's called Nomi AI. And what this does is it enables the user to use voice commands in order to turn up the music, to play a musical playlist, to adjust the temperature in the car. And they have a partnership with Tencent. So if you don't know who Tencent are, they are a multinational tech conglomerate, and they've been working together to develop technology to work on the self-driving automation of the cars. They have historically had a few financial problems. You know, they were at the brink of bankruptcy in 2020. You know, they've relied heavily on finances in the past, on financing from government. I know that like they have about 25% is owned by the Hefei government, which is a province in China. But some of the key things to consider with NIO is that, yeah, they may be operating at a loss, but part of that may be to do with the fact that they are investing $1 billion in research and development. I feel that this company's come under like quite a lot of flack, and it's kind of funny because people seem to kind of forget that Tesla were very much in the same kind of situation when they started for the first time. You know, they were unprofitable for 17 years. Now, it's not to say that this will be the case with NIO. I don't think they will. I actually think that they will turn profit within the next couple of years. I think what people are missing really is that, you know, this is a highly complicated and complex business to start. You know, they have a great leader. The guy is called William Li. And like the other two, again, a guy who is self-made. He's come from nothing, again, from a farming or agricultural town as well. Now, what's special about him is that, you know, he undertook 3 undergraduate degrees simultaneously. One of them was in sociology. I can't quite remember what the other 2 were in. And he has already floated 2 companies in the past, one on the US stock exchange and one in the Hong Kong stock exchange as well. And this will be the 3rd company now that he's taken public. And as mentioned, you know, they've partnered up with Geely in order to develop the battery swapping technology. And so one of the benefits of the battery replacement technology is that, you know, like with most technology, it only kind of lasts for a finite amount of time. When we're looking at mobile phones, when we're looking at our laptops, you know, when the battery runs out, when the battery depletes over, like, let's just say a 5 or 10 year period, it almost indicates that it's time to replace the product, right? Whereas in this situation or scenario, it seems like because they have this battery replacement technology, you know, if the battery requires replacement, you know, all you need to do is switch in a new one. From what I've seen, like, to replace a Tesla battery, it can cost anywhere from £6,000 to £20,000. These are, or $20,000. These are the kind of figures that I've seen online. And I suppose one of the standout things with this battery swapping technology, in theory, it looks like it could be that as a customer, you don't necessarily have that problem. You know, if you're looking to drive long distances, the ability to be able to kind of just pull up at a station and just swap the battery within 5 to 7 minutes would potentially be a lot more convenient than having to charge your car and wait whilst your car is charged at a service station, for example. Like I'm saying, you know, NIO are kind of still in a startup stage, and, you know, whether or not there are going to be these, you know, for example, in the UK or in Europe, I don't really see there being much development or stations where you can stop and have and swap your battery around. So, like I was saying, you know, there's still areas for NIO to develop. They're still, like I said, in startup mode, and it may take a little bit of time before we start seeing these stations where you can swap your batteries. NIO's share price seems to kind of fluctuate around $7 to $8, and William Li is actually the majority shareholder through a holding company wholly owned by Li, which is called Original Wish. And so in the link in the description below, you'll find like some videos and some resources. In particular, I've pulled out some interviews from some of the owners or founders of these companies, simply because, you know, I suppose the way I look at the EV market is that it's always in a constant state of change. There are quite a lot of unknowns. And with that, you kind of want to have an owner or a leader who has that entrepreneurial flair, who is able to adapt to changing situations, to adapt to certain problems. Like I said, you know, there are a lot of differing opinions online, people telling you one thing or another about these different companies. And I think fundamentally the truth is that no one really knows. No one can really foresee the future. The only real investment you have is investing in an individual who has certain characteristics and qualities that you feel are appropriate. You know, an individual who's going to respond appropriately to uncertain things in an ever-changing, uncertain industry as well. So have a look at them. But look, hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them below. Have a great day and speak to you soon. All the best.